Team Desert Horses from St. Paul's College, Namibia.
Good afternoon, esteemed board members. We are going to present our extension of strategy Clear Vision. We have prioritized the issues on a basis of urgency.
Volkswagen have put up a facade that they have been able to produce 400,000 electric vehicles that are, according to their marketing campaign, late but defect free. They pride themselves in their zero recall rate, but they have been faced with recent problems such as a lack of charging stations, low battery capacities, and a lack of dealer demand to sell their electric vehicles. Moreover, it has been identified that Volkswagen have used a potentially carcinogenic metal in their vehicles that may cause engine failure as well as pose a risk of fire. Thus, Team Desert Horses recommends that Volkswagen incurs the full 1.5 billion recall and repair cost in light of the recent Dieselgate scandal in an attempt to protect our reputation. We also want to partner with other car giants to build charging stations that will be stayed between the car giants instead of Volkswagen building charging stations on their own that other companies will simply be able to freeload off of. We want to partner with supplier 4 to allow them access to more financial means that they will be able to use to improve their battery quality, as well as setting up dealer education programs that will allow dealers to be educated on the drawbacks and the positives of our electric vehicles, therefore allowing them to market our products more effectively.
The decision to implement a service executive and nullify the need for the workers in the premium and super premium segments is a bold one, to say the least. Yet, we do have some areas of concern. First on that list is that this is the centralized units, the centralized departments of IT, human resources, and finance were centralized in order to increase the productivity of the company by bettering the communication. However, this is not the case due to two things. First of all, is due to the inexperience of the service executive, which Herbert disappointed. And thirdly, the tension between the service executive and the head executives. To alleviate the issue of this conundrum, we suggest implementing training courses and information courses for all the workers and emphasizing the changes which is going to happen to their routine. This will allow to decrease the stress in the workplace. Yet, we need to also reanalyze our hierarchy and make clear cuts. There's a delusional concept of the hierarchy whereby the service executive has less power than the head executives. And this is true, but this is causing tension. And we need to redesign your administrative requirements and allow the super premium and premium segments more freedom. They should not be required to adhere to all the administrative regulations and such as the employment and decision-making policies. They need simply more freedom. In addition, they have made some mistakes as well. And as a result, they have let off a lot of their workers by adopting a capital-intensive production line. This has greatly upset many workers and the trade unions, and they've done as much as possible to mitigate these effects, such as ensuring they are within the legal regulations, as well as hiring their workers in other segments. To appease the customers, however, which is what ensures the success of your company, you need to take on an extensive advertising campaign for the super premium and premium segments to ensure that sales do not drop.
The Chinese government want to lead the world in terms of e-mobility. Therefore, they have put their support in Chinese company BYD, who have proposed an offer for Volkswagen to share MEB technology, as well as proposing a new design of a compact electric vehicle that they will co-produce with Volkswagen. Although the agreement will cause for Volkswagen not to be able to sell this vehicle in the Chinese market, which is a potentially good market for us, we advise that Volkswagen pursues the joint venture with BYD. They will be able to use their previous working experience to realize synergies, as well as utilizing their stronghold to further market and sell other models. These models include SUV models that may be sold off to taxi companies that will make use of the sharing economies within China and therefore promote the sale of our vehicles.
The Navistar acquisition. We suggest that Traton SE wants to acquire Navistar, and both companies can benefit this. However, Navistar will benefit considerably more to the stakeholders of Traton SE. Navistar stakeholders will gain a 225% in their shares, as opposed to Traton only seeing a 25% increase in their gains. However, both companies will see an increase in their combined value after the acquisition. We suggest that they continue with this decision, as it will allow the companies access to new technology and their contracting manufacturing processes. This will allow them to break into the market and free up their finances, which will be used to fund their e-mobility strategy, which will then circle around back to the commercial vehicles and thus leapfrog themselves or distance themselves further from the competitors. However, our only concern with this decision is that there are rumors of Daimler and Volkswagen sharing the expenses for developing the charging infrastructure in Europe. This could be an area of concern, but we have the necessary tools to ensure that if Daimler do pull out, we can cover all our options. How will it be funded, you asked? Simply through a loan. Volkswagen has the necessary assets to provide security for the loan, and we see that the profits to come from this joint venture or acquisition will be used to finance the ongoing acquisition.
Now, when it comes to the driverless technology, it is a key performance area that we definitely have to indulge in, especially because whether it comes in 2 weeks or 2 decades, the fact remains it's coming. And if it's either you get on the train or you get left behind. So your first question must be, well, how? And we advise you take up the offer of investing into artificial intelligence, whereby you will gain 30% preferential ownership, which in Argo, which is a company that takes pride in collecting and analyzing data that it gets from cameras in cars. Yes. Now, your next question must be what? Well, we propose you start with commercial vans and medium-sized pickups. As what is your goal? To boost competitiveness. And which other company is thinking about trucks or is thinking about these larger vehicles? Now, the only problem we have with your driverless technology approach is the fact that your cars will sort of favor the lives of the people in it, and also it will crash whatever smaller object if it cannot escape a situation whereby it is in an accident. Now, we do not agree with this, as your motto is you are for the people. Therefore, we suggest you make it clear to Agro that they must enable the cars to differentiate between the living and the non-living. Now, before we even get to the what, we need a where, right? So we need a where. So you might face a few issues due to the authorities in the different countries that might not approve of you selling your product in their countries. Well, we suggest you do the same thing you did with the VW app. You can send emails, and most importantly, you can utilize native celebrities, social media influencers, or even politicians by recording them by using their videos of them in a test drive which will promote your company as they will evince your product's safety, privacy, as well as comfortability. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. That was a very beautiful presentation. I think considering the fact that you only had 3 hours to put it together, so one can see that a lot of thought had gone into what you had presented. And I think you did very well again in, putting your story across and putting the points across so eloquently. So it's interesting how your slides are, most of them. The case study specifically requires you to identify the problem and then the recommendation. So with the driverless technology slide, for instance, you just have the SWOT analysis. And I think it was difficult for me to hear. You spoke to a lot of things, but exactly what the problem is that you have identified with the driverless technology issue. So I think if you can please just speak to that. And in your first slide of the e-mobility, one of your recommendations is to partner with supplier 4 to improve battery quality. But I guess the problem that you are presenting, which is the 400 defects in the electrical vehicles, I'm struggling to make the connection in terms of how does partnering with supplier 4 deal with that? Because in the case presented, it doesn't say anything about the battery being at default. Instead, it speaks about the electrification strategy that might be problematic. And I guess, how do you therefore see the battery being the problem in terms of the 400 vehicles that can potentially be recalled?
Will you go to my slide? Will you go to my slide?
Can we please have a moment to confer with my team?
To explain this, we picked up several issues and we didn't want to just list them all. So what we did is we took your strengths, or the strengths, and we used it to cancel out your weaknesses. So for example, with the safety, you had the threats of the favoring, and that's why we used safety. And the safety is whereby you make the cars, you enable them to differentiate between the living and the non-living. Because, for example, why we found it as an ethical issue is because, say, for example, there is someone in the car, an adult, and then a child, 3 years old, runs across the street. Then it will favor the adult's life over the child's life, which we didn't see as right.
Okay, so what is the key problem that we identified with that? So that is the ethical dilemma, granted.
Yeah.
What is the main issue that you see confronting the company in as far as that is concerned? Is the ethical dilemma for you the key issue?
No, not the key, but
Okay.
also the key issue is you want to become a company that is part of driverless technology, but you do not know how. So you're not sure whether you should partner with Argo AL or if you should partner with other
Okay.
companies.
Okay.
In terms of the e-mobility strategy, we just wanted to clarify that partnering with supplier 4 to improve battery quality was in terms of mitigating the future risks that were presented, such as the car having a low battery capacity, which means it would have to stop too many times in between charging. So we wanted to mitigate that risk that was going to be presented.
How does that solve the problem that you've been presented with in the case?
The problem that we've been presented with is the defective cars and the defective engines of that have the carcinogenic metal in them. And we have solved that with our first point, where we are going to incur the entirety of the full recall cost, the recall and repair cost, to mitigate future risk.
And to improve the quality of the car going forward as well.
Well done on a really good presentation. I really like how you guys work together. Your transitions were great. You're very strong presenters, all of you. So congratulations. I also really, really like hearing how you talk about ethics. I have a feeling that one day when you run your own companies, a lot of people are going to want to work for you because you have such a strong ethical background. And I appreciate that. But on that note, I now want to ask you. So I know when we spoke around this executive and how you sort of wanted this hybrid solution about what to actually do with him. So I have a question for you. Let's assume that we want to keep him as an executive, and let's assume that we want to keep along the path that we're on. What can we do as a company to help him do his job better? So you did make some recommendations about training and stuff, but how would you do that? So let's assume that it's not going to go to someone else. It's going to stay with him. How do we empower him?
Okay, well, with regards to the training, we were more referring to the workers within those premium and super premium segments, and how they're upset, and they don't like being laid off, and that was just trying to reduce their stress in the workplace and to increase the productivity, because if you're stressed, you work as well. But with regards to that, it's simply he has to actually shadow someone of that experience, because he has the qualifications, but the qualifications doesn't come with experience. And that's simply all you can do, really.
The thing is, though, if you're busy executives in times of crises or whatever, and you're running around, you may not have the capacity to be that mentor. Is there ways potentially that we could support his team? Are there skills we could perhaps give his team that would help? Because this is obviously a transition that the company is going through. So is there somehow do you think that we could maybe augment that?
I'm going to try to answer that, but the problem is there's tension between all the executives, and they don't know where they sit in the food chain. And that's seen with the premium and super premium segments. They were starting to get in workers before all these organizational changes occurred, because they didn't necessarily agree with that. So simply the head, Herbert Dis, has shown faith in him, and he should just draw the line that when the big guy says, you must listen to him, then people listen to him. So I guess just showing actually verbal support and moral support to that team would ultimately spread across the whole country. Company, sorry.
Cool. Thank you for your presentation, team. Under the driverless technology slide, if you can go there, please, can you just clarify for me, we have been offered an opportunity to invest in Argo Artificial Intelligence. What is your recommendation in terms of how the board should proceed? Should we proceed and offer to purchase 30% of the company? And if so, the price that has been determined, do you deem it fair, or what are your thoughts on the price on the table?
We suggest that you do go ahead with the agreement, mainly because of the benefits that arise from it. So, for example, it will be a partnered thing with Ford, and also now Agro already does all the work for you, the nitty-gritty technological work for you. So that will take pressure off your employees who have never worked with a driverless technology before. Secondly, on the point of the price, it is 1.6 billion more than what Ford had invested. But if we take the time into consideration, they invested in 2017. So I guess with inflation and all of that, it's something that you have to accept. And also, it might be a little bit more pricey, but in the long run, you will be the best player in the market, and that, I guess, the sales from that will cancel out the large debt.
Yeah, and sorry, just to add on to that, a lot of that, the price, that 2.6 billion, lies in the intellectual, the factors. And Argo is the industry leader in driverless technology. So you're really actually paying that money to just be one step ahead of the competition. And I think that's why we think it's justified.
Hello team, I know this is a challenge. I'm going to ask you to keep your answers just clear and short. In the strategy and cost optimization aspect, what do you think is the central problem there? If you had to identify the number one problem, what is it?
Sorry, I need time to think, sorry.
Sure.
The main problem there is actually lying in the centralization, because the whole point of the centralization was to increase the efficiency and to by better communication, but now that's not occurring. The opposite is actually occurring. The diseconomies of scale is actually.
Okay, so forgive me, but I'm still not sharing what the problem is. I hear that you're saying they're meant to centralize, but it's not happening. But so what's actually the problem?
It's
to VW. What's the problem to
they
VW?
just have poor communication lines, and I think that's the problem. They need to plug in those holes, and that's the problem.
Okay, thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you.